Right. So there's about a common sense conversation, right? It's not in accordance with any particular scriptural injunction or religious teaching, but it's from just discernment, common sense, and practical way of practical living. Just living, picking up things by experience, being in a lot of relations, having contact with different entities, beings, right? Just living life, right? Changing a way of being, right? Living and making changes, right? This have to do with all of those things, life experience, right? This conversation. And this conversation is a topic on the issue of intimacy, right? Sexual intimacy with your partner, right? And things that people consider permissible or impermissible, or things that God, right? So it's a conversation. It's not a scriptural injunction like say teaching something or reading from the Quran or something, right? It's a conversation, right? So the issue of sexual intimacy, right? So there's just thoughts, there's views. There's not by Allah or by scripture or anything, right? So if it is that the permissibility then, right? Permissibility of particular sexual acts during sexual intimacy with your partner, right? Now, first of all, well, I will refer to the Quran when I'm saying this, like, if going forward in time that it should be conducting, right, any sexual activity together with somebody, right, it should be within the institution of marriage, right, and better if it is by Islam marriage, right. So, within, let me just get out of the way first, right? So if you're conducting any sexual activity with each other, it should in fact be by marriage, right? By a vow taken in the presence of God, or invoking the presence of Allah God, right? Within your marriage, right? So what's exactly marriage, right? Let me talk about that first. A was marriage, right? So what's marriage, right? Marriage is a union of two people, right? As well as to extend their families, right? So, in terms of getting married, right? Sometimes you might think, hey, we fall in love with somebody, you want to elope, you want to just get married, right? Quick, right? There's these things like Hollywood movies and these things, right? So you just want to get married, right? One time, right? Without your family getting involved and all these things, right? Now that's you might have people might have their reasons for wanting to do that, right? But why I say marriage is something between you and your family, and a marital union between you and your family and that person and their family to an extent, right? Because one, for me, I like to be private about certain things with regard to the internal situation regarding you and your partner, right? You and your partner in a relationship, right? I believe that a lot of things within that dynamic should be between you and your partner alone, right? So that's why I think, that's why I say to an extent, the marriage is between you and your family, to your partner and their family, right? To the extent that I think it should be between those two factors. I talk about marriage here before we go into the topic that I want to talk about, right? So that union now, right? Because you need, if you're getting married to somebody, right, you need to have at least some kind of you're not escaping your family, right? You shouldn't get married to escape your family, right? Because you're running from problems that you're supposed to confront, right? Anytime you look to get married or get into a relationship to escape your family, right? You're running from something that you're supposed to confront, a problem in itself, right? You're running from a problem in itself that you're supposed to confront, right? So this is why I advocate, hey, if even if again, and this is things by experience and learning too, because I mean, all of us would have done kind of things like this in the past, right? And we learn from it and move on, and then we'll now I'm teaching it because I learn from certain things, right? So if you get in a relationship, it shouldn't be a escapist thing. You ain't getting in a Hollywood relation, right? An escape in reality, right? So that's something I had to learn, right? You're not escaping anything. You're not supposed to be escaping anything, right? Because really, if you're doing that, you're escaping something in yourself, right? And you don't want to be running from problems, right? You're supposed to be facing problems head on, facing a challenge in life head on is a challenge. Our life's supposed to be like a challenge, and you have to face that challenge, right? So you are marital union between you, your partner, their family, your family, right? When I say to an extent, meaning, hey, they at least aware that they're in a relationship now, right? They're aware that they have a relationship, one. They have to be aware they're in a relationship. Two, right? Aware that you're going to get married, right? At least you want to tell your family members or your close family members, don't want to be everybody, but your close family members that, hey, there's this step are planning to take these particular steps, right, in order to get into a relationship and then further by getting married, right, by taking a vow, right? That's what you want to do, right? So you at least have that social element of your life intact, right? Social element is important to your life, right? A social element in your life is important because you can't live in isolation forever, right? So these are the things that you want to do. Hey, mom, dad, ma, pa, however you call your parents or your auntie, uncles, whoever your cousins, hey, you're getting married, right? Well, make the people closest to you aware, right? That is the step to take and as a social element to your relationship, right? As a social element, right? Um, so yeah, so that's important, right? And the awareness of your family to theirs, right? Your family to theirs. So you don't want to just escape and elope, and hey, your family don't know and he family don't know, right? Your family don't know, she family don't know, right? You elope and go somewhere and live, and none of all your families ever meet, right? Or come in contact with each other, right? So that's some things that are considered a little bit impractical when you consider reality, right? And we're coming out of dreams into reality, right? Coming out of dream life into reality life, right? So you want to ensure that hey, your family both families meet each other and they have a mutual cordial relationship, right? And no backbiting and no gossiping, right? And no saying, hey, watch she, watch he, watch this, watch that, right? Both families meet and in a cordial way. And it don't have to be any kind of big deal, right? It's just a cordial in-person meeting. Hey, this is the person, this is the daughter, this is the son, right? And both of them are going to get married, right? And you have a cordial a cordial meeting, a pleasant meeting, right? It doesn't have to be fake, and this is what I like about Islam too, right? You remove any fakeness. You could be cordial and it don't be fake. You could be authentic, it don't be fake, right? You be cordial and pleasant, right, in that meeting, but you're not fake. You're normal, right? And it's just a pleasant meeting. Just because people don't gossip back, bye, rah, about each other, don't mean that you're fake, right? Some people tend to think that if you don't have some kind of bacchanal, right, that you're fake or you're putting on a show, right? And I don't like that kind of thing, right? People is thinking in order for it to be real, it has some kind of bacchanal in the environment, right? Bacchanal meaning drama, right? So that's how people is think about a real situation. Or you have a wedding, or it had some or a funeral, it had some kind of bacchanal going on, right? No, you could actually have a real situation, a cordial meeting between two groups of families, and you just move on, and things will be as simple as that if people want it to be as simple as that, right? So that's the thinking, right? So two families meet, pleasant, whatever, right? To that extent, right? Whatever it has happened between you and your spouse, right? That's between you and your spouse, right? And things you have to be mature enough. Once you're mature enough to take these steps, right? You're mature enough to actually resolve whatever issues that you have to resolve too, right? Between each other and so on in a relationship. Right, we're moving on to this topic that we're talking about because in a relationship, right, sexual intimacy and thing is an important part of sustaining your relationship, right? To the extent that you both agree, of course. It's not about what a psychologist says, it's not about what anybody on YouTube or me say, right? It's to the extent that both of you find it necessary, right? Or what the word is, right? Important or significant is the value both of you place. So it's not a matter, hey, somebody saying you have to do this, somebody externally. That is a topic where both of you want to discuss that personally, in person, right? A topic both of you want to discuss that personally, in person, and say, hey, well, this is the amount of value I place on this particular thing in sustaining my relationship, right? So both of you had to come to that conclusion. Hey, this is the amount of value that I place on this particular aspect of my relationship that I see it important in sustaining that relationship, right? And that's between two of you. That don't have to do with anybody else, right? That don't have to do with anybody else, right? that is strictly between both of you, right? Um, so so whatever it is, right? That is beside the point, right? So we going on to that topic of discussion, the acts considered permissible and impermissible, right? That's also between you all, right? It's not nothing but no religion, no book, but it's about what I would say is about having a respect for each other during those moments of sexual intimacy, right? So the acts that you want to engage in doesn't matter to the extent that you have respect for your partner during the activity is taking place, right? Meaning that, hey, you see how these the idea of intimacy, a lot of it came out of pornography, right? This whole this kind of thinking, pornographic, animalistic, carnal, sexual activity, and so on, right? There's something that I would never promote in a real relationship. A lot of people have a lot of fantasies and stuff and fetishes fantasy, which I suggest before you get into a marriage, right? Before getting into a marriage, you're ready your mind out of all them things, right? Both male and female, right? So this is state of mind of the collective, right? The entire earth actually, entire earth. This is state of mind. That's why we're trying to help people to resolve those things, right? So it's nothing to be ashamed of, afraid of, nothing like that, right? Or nothing afraid to talk about either, right? Because I talk about all topics or nothing excluded, right? So a lot of people, male and female, like have a lot of fantasies, fetishes regarding sexual acts, intimacy, all these things, right? So what we're aiming to do is to help people to remove all those things, right? So you get to the root of what it is you want, what it is you like, what is your value, right? And then you go into a relationship and get married, right? So all those things, right, is part of our memory of things that we collected, imprints that we collected growing up, right? And even part, if we had past lives, and so on, but it is memory, imprints, right? Collected from different aspects of a largely satanic world, right? We've been residing in, right? So it's little pieces, bits and pieces of satanic aspects of the world that we collected and it imprint, right? It left as these like uh, little pieces of garbage, right? Really, in our consciousness, and we play on that now and use that in real life when we are intimate, and we shouldn't do that, right? We shouldn't do that. So that is why this exercise that I'm doing here, right, is to help people to rid their minds out of the garbage, the garbage imprints, right? That we collected through growing up, through memory, through experience, with contact with all these different things. So we go into a marriage with a more innocent and purer state of being, right? And that purer state of being is going to make our experience more enjoyable, right? With the person that we choose to engage with those activities with, right? So you see, like one person, right? They go into a relationship, right? And that those acts of intimacy now become unique, right? Unique to you and that person alone, right? And to have nobody attached to that, right? Is that intimacy is only assigned to both of you. Whatever you choose to do, once you and your partner is comfortable, right? Because remember, it's both of you are alone sharing that dynamic, right? So once you and that person alone is comfortable with those acts, and you maintain respect for your partner, because you need to maintain respect even in acts of intimacy, right? So I know there are things, instances where people like certain things a certain way, and certain things will border on disrespect, right? For either the male or female, right? There are certain actions during that period of time when they're doing these things, right? That will border on disrespect, perhaps. And sometimes one of the partner will feel embarrassed or ashamed to say, "Hey, well, I feel disrespected by that," or "I don't like how you're doing this," or "I think you should do this differently," and there's a problem a lot of couples have, right? That they don't know how to tell the spouse, "Hey, I don't like how you're doing this," or "You shouldn't, you're making me feel a certain way during this activity, and I'm not comfortable with it, and I don't like it. If you could do it different," and they talk about it, right? And they talk about where you like, you talk about where you don't like, right? And this how you resolve these issues, right? You don't keep silent about it and just do things, right? So and just do things for the because you think it's going to make somebody else in the relationship happier or more pleasure or something like that. both of you had a come to a agreement, and you talk even during those moments, right? You have a conversation even during those moments, and you say, hey, well, babe, well, honey, this not making me feel comfortable right now, right? Hey, or hey, babe, I'm not really feeling in that mood right now. Hey, well, babe, I think you should do this differently. I don't really like how you're doing this, right? You converse during that time, right? You have a conversation even, and some people will be like, oh, you're killing the mood, you're killing the mood. Right? That's wrong, right? It's wrong. That state you supposed to be in a mature relationship, right? Nothing's supposed to be what you consider a mood killer, this, that, right? You and your partner are supposed to be in a fully stated union, right? Functioning as one, right? You two are supposed to be functioning as one to the extent that none of these things even matter, right? None of those things, because we're trying to remove all those crazy thoughts, fantasies, fetishes, right? Everything, right? So that you actually see a real relationship and know a real relationship, sex and all and everything for what it is, right? And what's the purpose and what it is, and how you're actually supposed to function in that environment, right? How you're supposed to function in that space as a healthy human being, right? As a healthy human being, right? Um, so that's what it is about. So these things is like it's kind of moving out of a state of immaturity then, right? Moving out of a state of immaturity where sexual acts, all these things concern, right? And moving more into a mature phase of life, right? Where you realize, hey, certain things that I've done, been doing, I'm thinking about, feeling, right, regarding this topic, right, was largely unnecessary, and mostly things that you picked up from a industry, right? Things that you actually picked up from our industry, right? And not things that you really value, inherently want, right? To sustain a lifetime with a person, right? So what you're actually looking for is sustenance for a lifetime, right? And actually sex is only a part of that, right? Because to sustain a relationship for a lifetime, you need way more than sex, right? To sustain a lifelong relationship, sex is only one dynamic, right? One dynamic. You have your religious life, your spiritual life, right? You have your family life. If you have children, you have your children. If you have work, you have work, right? You have household chores, you have household chores, right? You have all the activities, right? So it's to move away, right, from putting all that energy and emphasis into one sphere of life, right, and understanding how everything actually functions together, right? So you become healthier, right? Healthier, right, from a standpoint of religion, or correct religion, right? And within the parameters of what God would actually, or Allah would actually want for that designated space, right? So that's just our conversation, right? So I didn't really answer the question in terms of, hey, what acts permissible, because it's not relevant. It's not relevant to publicly talk about those things, right? It's not relevant. That, like I said, that is between you and your person, and once both you and your person feel respected, right, within those acts, or within that boundary, you feel free to do whatever. Once you and she and you, right, feel respected while those acts are being conducted or performed, right? So that's just that. I'll leave that as that. Right? Have a blessed night.